Hare Krishna, everybody.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I hope all of you can see my screen, and if you are able to hear clearly.
Yes, yes.
Okay, very nice. Thank you, everybody, for joining the class today. I know it's a long weekend, but a lot of you expressed the desire to continue with the classes, so we are doing that. Before we get started, I just wanted to see if anyone had any questions or comments from the discussion last week, any feedback before we move on with today's discussion. Okay, looks like nobody has any questions or comments, so I think we can get started with today's session. So we are at part 3 of introduction, I believe, and we'll try to complete the introduction today. Let's see how much we can go, but should, you know, if there is a little pending, then we might have to take portion of next week's class, but I think we are approaching the final stretch, and after that we will go into chapter 1, starting with verse number 1. So last week we concluded our discussing about the 4 defects. So we are talking about how Vedas, they were spoken by Lord himself, and they are also known as apauruseya, which means that they are not a product of a person. So knowledge in this world is, you know, is generally considered that it's an outcome of research and a lot of rational thinking and analysis, and that's how a lot of different texts are composed especially within the scientific research domain. But the Vedas are not of that category, right? They are not product of human faculty. They are spoken by the Lord himself, and they exist even prior to the creation. And so they are free from the 4 kinds of defects. Anyone would like to summarize what those 4 defects are that we discussed last time in your own words? Can we have some volunteers who would like to? You remember the 4 defects? So
senses are not to be trusted.
Okay. So senses are imperfect, right? Okay. What's the next one?
It's illusion.
And so what is particularly that is subject to illusion? It's not mentioned over here, but I elaborate a little bit in the class last week. So the soul is covered by four layers. And so one of the layers is the senses, and the senses are imperfect. So there is another covering on the soul, which is subject to illusion. Anyone remembers what that covering is? It's a mind that is subject to illusion. Yes. Right. So optical illusion, we looked at an example of optical illusion. So mind is basically, if any kind of signals that we get from different senses, the mind actually tries to bucket them into different categories, and mind is subject to illusion. Okay, what's the third defect?
Tendency to cheat others.
Yeah, so tendency to cheat others is a defect of the ego. So when somebody gets egoistic, even if they know something is untrue, just to satisfy one's ego, they might speak the untruth. It's just because there's a tendency to cheat. And then there's one more. Which is the first one, right? These is to commit mistakes. So intelligence, even if somebody might be the most intelligent person in the world, the intelligence is subject to commit mistakes. So there is no one who can claim that they are not prone to errors. That's why we say to err is human and to forgive is divine. So that is the defect of intelligence. We have senses, mind, intelligence, and ego. Each of them have different defects. So Vedic knowledge is not subject to these 4 defects, because Vedic knowledge, the Vedas, they are not product of human faculty, right? So they are spoken directly by Krishna. His senses are not imperfect. He is not subject to illusion. He does not have a cheating tendency, and then he does not commit mistakes. So that's why it's of a completely different category. Okay. So this Vedic knowledge was first imparted to Brahma, who is the first living being in this creation. And it is Brahma who then imparted or disseminated this knowledge to his sons, to his disciples, just as he originally received from the Lord himself. So here is described, the Lord is perfect, and that's why there is no possibility of him being subject to those 4 kind of defects which we see in this material world. So one should know that the Lord is the original proprietor of everything in the universe. He is the original creator. And later on, when we study Bhagavad Gita, we'll see that the Lord is referred to as Prapitamaha. So Brahma is Pitama. Right? Pitama is the great grandfather. Right? But Prapitamaha refers to Krishna, who is the father even of Brahma. Right? And so he is the original proprietor of everything. And every living entity in this creation has his own quota for his maintenance. So there is enough in this world to meet or satisfy everybody's need. Right? So Mahatma Gandhi has a very famous court. He's known as Mahatma. Bhagavad Gita has a different definition of Mahatma, and we will cover it at an appropriate time. But he has this title Mahatma, so I'm referring him as Mahatma Gandhi. But the definition of Mahatma as per Bhagavad Gita is very different. So he said that there is enough in this world to satisfy everybody's need, but not to satisfy everybody's greed. So by the Lord's arrangement, there is food available even for a small ant, and an elephant who consumes food in much larger quantity, there is enough available for the elephant also. And so everyone's need are different, and then there is a quota according to their needs. So everyone has enough available for their maintenance by the arrangement of the Lord. And one should act according to those arrangements. So we should not use what is beyond what is allocated for us, for our maintenance. So we should limit ourselves to what is allocated for our maintenance. So there are many examples given how we are to utilize things which are set aside for us by the Lord in Bhagavad Gita. So the example that Srila Prabhupada gives over here is that Arjuna, just before the beginning of the battle of Kurukshetra, he made he decided that he should not fight, right? And then he gives different considerations of why he should not fight. But especially he saw his teachers, his great-grandfather, his brother-in-laws, his relatives on the other side, and he had an emotional connection with them. And so he thought that even if I win the war, and if all those who really I care for, if they are all dead, how am I going to enjoy this kingdom, right? So that was his consideration. And so one was, he was first of all worried about the fact that he doesn't want his relatives and teachers and all those who care, all those about whom he cares, he didn't want them to die. And say, as far as winning the war and enjoying the kingdom is concerned, there is no enjoyment if I have to kill my own kinsmen. So Srila Prabhupada mentions over here that this consideration by Arjuna was on a bodily platform, right? Because it was on a bodily platform, his decision was not correct, right? He was considering his own personal will and desire, what pleased him and what did not please him, right? In order to decide whether he should fight or not. So because he wanted to satisfy his bodily demands, his decision whether he decides to fight or does not decide to fight, irrespective of what his final conclusion is, but if the criteria based on which he is deciding that is flawed to begin with, right? And so Krishna is then that's the reason Krishna eventually speaks Bhagavad Gita to guide Arjuna on what is the proper perspective, how he should look at things. And once the Bhagavad Gita is spoken and when Arjuna understands everything, then he says that, okay, now I understand the things factually and I will act accordingly. So what has this to do with the previous discussion that we mentioned over here, right? In the previous paragraph, it says that no one should claim to be a proprietor of anything. One should only accept things which are set aside for him by the Lord for his maintenance. So Arjuna, at least in the beginning of the Kurukshetra war, he was not acting according to this instruction, right? He was considering himself as the proprietor. He was thinking that, hey, even if I win the war, then I would be the proprietor of the kingdom. And then based on that faulty understanding, he's saying that, hey, I won't be able to enjoy because my relatives won't be present, right? But after listening Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna eventually understands that, well, he is not the proprietor, right? So he should, even if he wins the war, right? Even if he wins the war, he is meant to serve according to dharma, according to religious principles. And so dharma should be the only consideration, not the consideration that whether he would be able to enjoy the kingdom or not. Whether he would be able to enjoy the kingdom once he wins the war, or whether the fact that all his relatives would die and then that would make him sad. That is also another material consideration, right? Or the fact that, hey, I don't want to fight, I'll go and then this will ensure that none of my relatives die, right? So, and because they would be alive and they would be happy, I will be happy. That is also a material consideration. He's only thinking about what would make him happy, right? Whether he fights or does not fight, he's thinking relatives again in terms of first of all, that understanding comes of my relatives. What is me, mine? That idea of mine comes when one thinks that one is this material body. And based on that, when we have this extended understanding of my immediate family, my nation, my caste, my religion, and all this, they are extended bodily identifications. So regardless of what Arjuna decides to do, the criteria based on which he was making the decision was flawed to begin with. Okay. So that is a relation over here in regard to the previous comment by Srila Prabhupada, that one should not claim to be the proprietor of anything. But Arjuna initially is all his thought process was based on this flawed understanding that, hey, I am the proprietor. And based on that understanding, he was thinking whether I would be able to enjoy or not. Anyone has any questions so far? Okay. So we can move on if there are no more questions. So the next discussion over here is that Srila Prabhupada mentions that this world is, in this world, people are not meant for quarreling. They're not meant for quarreling like cats and dogs. So it's a natural propensity of different animals that they are fighting for various reasons. They're fighting for food. They're fighting to sometimes they're fighting just to show their influence over certain territory, right? So if we pass through a neighborhood, sometimes the dog becomes very possessive, or it wants to really show that, hey, I am the in charge of this territory, and that's why the dogs start barking. So even they have this tendency of what they consider that this is my domain of influence. So humans, they are not meant for quarreling like cats and dogs, because humans, they're intelligent and they have discrimination, and humans can understand what is the higher purpose of life. They can understand the scriptures, they can understand the directions given by a guru, they can understand Bhagavad Gita, they can understand Vedic literature. In case of animals, they are simply acting out of their instincts, and because they are acting based on their instincts, they are not subject to sinful activities. Like we cannot expect a tiger to consume grass. Right? You cannot expect a tiger to be a vegetarian. The tiger is a carnivorous animal, and then it's meant to hunt and consume the flesh of its prey. We cannot expect a different behavior from a carnivorous animal. So they don't incur any sinful reaction. But in case of humans have a discrimination, and they are responsible for the choices they make. So there are different rules that apply to human life and animal life, and that's why it's important over here to understand. Srila Prabhupada is making a point that humans, they are not meant to quarrel like cats and dogs. So one might question that why is Krishna inducing Arjuna to fight. Because right now we read that statement. What is the statement? That this in this world, men are not meant for quarreling like cats and dogs. And Arjuna is saying the same thing. Hey, I don't want to fight. Right? So why is Krishna inducing him to fight? So the difference that we understand is the reasons why the animals fight is they are simply acting on an animalistic and instinctive principle. They are fighting or killing just for food, or just to show that who is more powerful, or they have a very egoistic idea, or sometimes they want to exert their control over a domain or a territory. And humans, they are supposed to, ideally the war should be avoided at all means. Like just like this Kurukshetra war, the Pandavas tried so many different means to stop the war to take place. But the opposite party, led by Duryodhana, they were bent upon fighting. They even sent Krishna as the messenger, peacemaker. They want to do a deal. But then that did not manifest. That did not happen. So Kshatriya literally means, Kshat means to harm, Triya comes from the root word tra, means to deliver. Kshatriyas are the ones who fight to protect the subjects from harm, right? So they're fighting for the cause of dharma, to make sure in under the rule of which righteous king, all the needs of the citizens are fulfilled. Not only material needs, but spiritual needs, they are also fulfilled. So that's why the leader should be very righteous. So in the next statement, Srila Prabhupada mentions that all the activities are under the three modes of nature. And then these modes of nature will be discussed much more in detail towards the later chapters in Bhagavad Gita. But goodness, passion, and ignorance, these three modes, you might be more familiar with the Sanskrit terms for this, which are goodness refers to sattva gun, passion refers to rajogun, and ignorance refers to tamogun. So everything in this world, not only things, but all kind of activities, they are all products of the combination of these three modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance, sattva, raja, and tama. Just like you have three colors, red, green, and blue. And if you combine these three colors in different proportions, one can create innumerable shades. There is no limit to the number of shades we can create just by combining these three colors. Similarly, all the activities in the world, all the things, physical things, or everything within the creation is a combination of these three modes. How? Again, we will understand this much more in detail. But to give you an example, just like in a digital world, right? Everything is binary, zeros and ones. If we talk about digital technologies, right? So if any kind of device we are using, there is an operating system on it. The operating system is written again in a binary language. So it can all be broken down to zeros and ones. Once the operating system on a device is up and running, then we have different kind of softwares or applications that run on that operating system. Those applications which run, they are also combinations of zeros and ones. And these applications consume data. Could be files like images or videos or text that we send, but they are also combinations of zeros and ones. So similarly, in this creation, just like digital world is a binary creation, the creation of the Lord is a ternary creation. Ternary meaning three. What are the three? Sattva, Raja, and Tama. So with these three modes, even the building blocks of this universe are created, which is described much more in detail in Srimad Bhagavatam. So the physical elements are combination of these three modes, like earth, water, fire, air, ether. How they are created by combining these three elements is described. Then all the species, they are also in different modes. Once the basic elements are created, then species of lives are created. They are also combination of these three modes. And even the activities that the living beings perform, they are also influenced by the three modes of nature. So Srila Prabhupada mentions that the kind of food that we eat is also influenced by three modes. So if we would eat wholesome, fresh food uh, that is sustaining and increasing the life, increasing the vigor and the strength of the body, that is food in the mode of goodness. Food that is more salty, spicy, is in the mode of passion. It increases passion. And ignorance, the food in the mode of ignorance is basically food which is abominable or prohibited, which is not suitable for consuming for human beings. Stale food. So when I say not suitable for consumption is, meat products, for instance, food that is rotten or stale. It's cooked for more than and left for more than a day or 8 hours. You see start. It's not good anymore, right? So that's food in the mode of ignorance. Similarly, in this context, what is important is that Srila Prabhupada is trying to make a point that even the act of fighting or a war can be classified into three modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. So fighting for the cause of dharma, for the right cause, according to the injunctions of the scriptures, there are standards, rules, and regulations. Like when the Kurukshetra war was fought, they only fought during daytime. In the night time, all the opposing parties would even get together. They might have dinner together, or they could go and visit each other camps, right? And they're very civilized, and they are interacting in a they won't attack anyone in the night. And then even during the daytime when they're fighting, there are codes you cannot attack someone who does not have a weapon, right? A charioteer would fight another charioteer. Infantry would fight against infantry, right? So you fight against your equals, and then if somebody does not have a weapon, you don't attack, right? So there are different codes of fighting. And then also you're fighting for the right cause. This is fighting in the mode of goodness. Fighting in the mode of passion means that one is not fighting for the sake of dharma. One is fighting for their own personal ambition. So lot of the wars that we, especially if you look at the medieval times where different empires were trying to expand, like the even you talk about the Ottoman Empire or the Mughals or Alexander, he was trying to expand his influence and territory, capturing new territories and kingdoms. After that, the European settlers or the colonists, they were trying to expand their colonies all over the world. Like say we have the Spanish colonies in Latin America, and the British Empire, they had colonies all over the world. So this is all the activity in the mode of passion. They are not trying to gain new territories for the cause of dharma. They are not fighting for the cause of righteousness. So this kind of activities or wars are in the mode of passion. And then fighting the mode of ignorance is fighting for no reason. You can, and just there are no codes of engagement, and just on whimsical basis. So a lot of terrorism that we see in the world at the moment, and children, women, old men are killed. There's no discrimination. There's looting, and they are basically vandals. There's no reason, just out of ego, right? They don't really have any purpose. I mean, they have some idea or purpose, like they want to, maybe in the name of religion somebody does this, but we see that there are instances where even when they are doing in the name of religion, but they go on even during fighting during the holy days, or they would even attack places of worship, even from their own religion, right? So then they're saying in the name of religion, but then they are attacking their own places of worship, but maybe because it's a different sect or there is some difference of opinion. So there is no logic to it. So all those kind of wars are in mode of ignorance. So I just wanted to make that distinction, because Srila Prabhupada is making a statement that one should we are not meant for quarreling like cats and dogs. So cats and dogs, they don't understand dharma. They're not fighting for the cause of dharma. But here Krishna is inducing Arjuna to fight because that's for the right cause. So one has to make a discrimination. So all activities, including the act of war, is also influenced by the three modes of nature. And one should, in human life, one should rise to the mode of goodness. Any questions so far? Any comments? Okay, we can move on in that case. So all these things are explained in Bhagavad Gita. And the ultimate purpose is that the living entities should reach the spiritual destination, which is beyond this material sky. So in the spiritual sky is also known as Sanatan sky or the eternal sky. So why is it referred to as Sanatan or eternal sky? Because in this material world, which comprises of millions and trillions and uncountable universes, they are created. That means they manifest and they eventually are destroyed. They become unmanifest. So there is constant creation and destruction in this world, not only of our mortal bodies, but on a larger time scale, even the creation which comprises of different planetary systems, they are also subject to destruction. But the spiritual sky is not subject to destruction. The spiritual sky is the abode of the different transcendental forms of the Lord in different Vaikuntha planets, and other where in Vaikuntha planets where the four-handed Narayana form is eternally present. But even beyond that, we have the two-handed forms of Krishna in as a Dwarka Krishna or Mathura Krishna or as Lord Sri Ram in Ayodhya. And for each of these different forms, there are different planets. So Srila Prabhupada elaborates on this point further. He's explaining that in this world, everything comes into being, produces byproducts, dwindles and vanishes. This is the material law. But the living beings or the souls, which the jivatmas, they are eternal. But despite of being eternal, we are put into a body which is mortal and which is subject to all these different phases of coming into existence, creating byproducts, getting old, and ultimately dying. It's the death of the body. But because of our identification with this mortal body, the soul thinks that that he comes into being, he grows, and then dwindles and dies. So that's very unnatural experience. That is not the real nature of the soul, but it's put into this situation. So just like a fish, which cannot be happy outside of water, similarly the soul, which is a spirit, cannot be happy outside of the spiritual sky. So we are put into this temporary material situation and we cannot be happy. No matter how much comfort we try to increase and try to solve the problem, it won't satisfy us. Just like a fish, you take the fish out of the water and then you can give the fish all kind of luxuries, put the fish on the beach. Hey, enjoy the sun, and give some nice soda to drink, or and put some sunscreen, or put an umbrella and enjoy the beach like humans tend to enjoy. But that's not going to make the fish happy. It will not even survive. It will die. So similarly, the spiritual part and the living entities, they are spiritual fragments of the ultimate absolute truth, Krishna. And having left the spiritual sky in this material world, we cannot be happy despite of being engaged into different kind of activities and all kind of material comforts. That's not going to make us happy. So we are temporarily engaged in different activities, but all these activities have to be purified, and they can be purified. And when we go through that purification and we revive our original spiritual identity, then we become eligible to regain our original spiritual form in the spiritual world. So that is the objective of Bhagavad Gita. Any questions so far? Okay.
No, Professor.
Okay. So let's move on. So we talked about the spiritual sky or the Sanatan abode. Sanatan just means eternal. So in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna declares that he is the father of all living entities. Aham bija pradha pita. So these living entities, they assume different forms of bodies according to their different karmas and different proclivities. Each living entity is seeking a different kind of sense enjoyment. And then different bodies are suitable for different kind of enjoyments. And just like a child, he wants to exert its independence and like, hey, I want to enjoy on my own. He gives up the protection and shelter of his father. Then the child is on his own, and the father, being protective, initially might want to, let him learn the lessons of life, and then he might give him some means, hopefully try to protect him even in his independence, and give him some means that he can go and exert his independence and try out things, and hopefully he will learn the lessons and will try to regain its original situation to be protected by his father and not exert its own whimsical independence. So similarly, the Lord, he has created this material world for the living entities to try out different kind of enjoyments, and for that different species of lives have been created. And the Lord is very eager and is hoping that eventually the living entities will understand that no matter what he tries, he won't be happy in trying to pursue sense enjoyment independent of Krishna. So to give an example, like, taking rest or sleeping is pleasing, right? I mean, you can, it's also important for the body to get refreshed. And there are some people who just like to sleep extended periods of time, but even despite of that, there's only so much they can sleep, because human body is not meant to sleep for, it's not really made to facilitate sleeping for a long period of time. But a bear's body is very suitable for that purpose. A bear can hibernate for 6 months more. So based on different kind of proclivities, somebody who is for instance is interested in sleeping, they might be awarded a body of a bear, right? Similarly, consuming flesh, for instance, we talked about this briefly last time, is that human body is not really suitable for doing that, right? One has to raise different cattle, and then they maintain slaughterhouses to slaughter those animals. That's significant investment in different machines and energy and the logistics, and finally the meat is transported to different stores, grocery stores, and somebody buys it, then you have to cook it, and then even after that, those who consume flesh, they have to use fork and knife, and then oftentimes that is has to be further, after consuming meat, there's probably they need alcohol to digest it further, right? But in the body of a tiger, you don't need all that, right? The tiger is adapted with very strong body and strength in their arms with claws to hunt down a prey and tear it open. And then the teeth are really adapted to tear open the prey that was killed, and then consume the flesh and then digest it very easily. So it's just another example. So basically different species of life are meant for different kind of, these bodies are suitable for different kind of enjoyment. And so across all the species of life, Krishna is saying, I am the seed giving father. That's what the point is. He's saying Bij Pradha Pita. I am the father of all the living entities across all species of life. And as these living entities are trying to enjoy in this world independently of Krishna, the Lord is eager to reclaim these souls. And so Krishna descends from the spiritual sky, comes down to this world in his original form as Krishna. He does that once in a day of Brahma, which is very long. A day of Brahma goes into like billions of years. So he appears once and he gives a glimpse of what it is like in the spiritual world. So this replica of Vrindavan, which is in northern India, in Uttar Pradesh, it's a replica of the original spiritual world, Goloka Vrindavan. And he enacts the same pastimes over here that he conducts in the spiritual world, in Goloka Vrindavan, and to give us a glimpse so that we are attracted and we know what it is like to be in the spiritual world. And then he delivers the spiritual knowledge also in the form of Bhagavad Gita, which is the philosophical aspect of it. And then there is the aspect of rasa or emotions, which he personally exhibits in his wonderful pastimes, especially in Vrindavan, but also in Mathura and Dwarka. And he is giving a glimpse of the spiritual world so that the souls are attracted in pursuing the spiritual path and to reclaim their original spiritual identity. And so not only he comes personally, but in every yuga, so as Krishna, he comes once in a day of Brahma. But in other ages, he comes in other different forms. So there are many other Vishnu forms, right? So there is Matsya, Kurma, Vara, Narsingha, Vamana, Ram, Parsuram, right? Kalki, Buddha. There are innumerable incarnations. So in those forms, he also comes. And then in other instances, he sends his empowered servants who are really meant to revive the spiritual culture in the society. So you talk about Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, Nimbarkacharya, Vishnu Swami, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, is Krishna himself, and Srila Prabhupada. He presented and revived this spiritual knowledge in the present world. So this empowered, or even if you talk about other religion, Jesus' life, that he was definitely an empowered messenger of the Lord. Prophet Muhammad, if you look at his original teachings, then we can understand that he's again an empowered personality. Now, in the present context, the way the religion is practiced might have deviated quite a bit from the original teachings, but that doesn't mean that these were not the empowered personalities who were sent by the Supreme Personality of Godhead to present the message according to time, place, and circumstances. Because when the place and circumstances is different, the message is presented in a different way, in a different language, in a different cultural context, but the essence of it is the same. Even in the 4th chapter, Krishna will explain that even Bhagavad Gita, he says, I had spoken this to sun god millions of years ago. The demi-god of sun, this knowledge was imparted to him millions of years ago, but that knowledge was lost. So he is restarting that tradition and by instructing this knowledge to Arjuna. So it is not uncommon for any spiritual tradition to lose its original essence over a period of time, and that's why whenever that happens, there is a decline in religion, right? Because the purity of the original message is lost over a period of time. And so what does the Lord do? We talked about that in earlier classes. Yada yada hi adharmasya glanir bhavati bharata. Whenever and wherever there's a decline in religion, right, and an increase in religion, the Lord comes personally, or he sends his empowered servants. So that's the point. Any questions so far? Okay, moving on. So there is the idea of sanatana-dharma. So this is sanatana-dharma. Vedic knowledge is presenting the sanatana-dharma. This sanatana-dharma is not referring to any sectarian religion. So sometimes there is a misconception. So when you talk about Bhagavad Gita, it is understood as a Hindu religion, but it's not a Hindu religion as such, because even when we talk about the word Hindu, it's not mentioned anywhere in the Vedas. In the Vedic literature, the word Hindu does not come. It's a word that the Mughal invaders, the Muslim invaders, when they came to India, which is a land further east of Sindhu River. And and then they cannot pronounce the sound sa very clearly. So they, instead of Sindhu, they would say Hindu. And often they use the term in a derogatory way, that people who follow their whatever culture or tradition is followed in this tract of land, they are called Hindus. So you might see some correlation or some identity, where we tend to sort of understand as a Hindu, or people in general think that Bhagavad Gita has to do with Hindu religion, but it's not. It's not a sectarian thing, because the identity of Hindu is relatively is new compared to the tradition of sanatana-dharma, which extends millions and trillions of years in the past. Because this sanatana-dharma, sanatana itself means eternal. It did not come into being at a particular point in time. So that is the import of what sanatana-dharma refers to. And we will discuss that in detail. Why is it sanatan? Why is it eternal? So here there is a quotation. Sripad Ramanujacharya has explained the word sanatan means something that does not have a beginning, nor does it have an end. If you talk about sectarian religions, whether you take Christianity or Islam or even Hinduism or Buddhism, they all have a beginning, in the sense that they began at a particular point in time, right? But Sanatana Dharma does not begin at a particular point in time, and nor does it end. So what exactly does it mean, right? How do we understand this? So let's talk about this a little bit more in details. So Sanatana Dharma, let's break it down into two parts. So one is dharma, and then there is the idea of Sanatan. So let's understand the word dharma. So what exactly does dharma mean? So dharma is loosely translated as religion, but that does not do justice to this word, because religion, it conveys the idea of faith, right? And many times faith is also understood as it's used synonymously as dogma. I believe in something, right? I might believe in something, somebody else might believe in something else, but the truth cannot be ascertained by belief, and the belief system can be changed. I might believe something today, and I might believe something tomorrow. So by definition, this is something that is not permanent, right? It cannot be sanatan. Religion by definition cannot be sanatan, right? Because religion is faith-based, and faith can change, right? So what does the word dharma means? So dharma comes from the same root word, which is also dharti, right? So dharti literally means that which supports, right? So this earth in Sanskrit is referred to as dharti, because it supports all these species of life, right? It sustains life, it supports even physically. So dharma, dharti iti dharma, one that which sustains one's identity, that is dharma. So the example that is given, there are a couple of examples that's given. So what is the dharma of water? What is the identity of water? Liquidity is the identity of water. If you freeze water, it transforms into ice. As soon as it transforms into ice, you cannot say it is water. I mean, you can say it's still H2O, or scientifically how we understand it, but it's solid. It's not liquid anymore, right? So the essential definition of something which really defines water is the liquidity. As soon as you take the liquidity out of water, it's not water anymore, right? Similarly, fire. As soon as we take heat and light out of fire, then fire ceases to exist. You cannot call it fire, because that is a dharma. Heat and light, that's the dharma of fire. Just like liquidity is the dharma of water. Similarly, if we have to find out what is the dharma of the jivatma, what is the dharma of the living entity, we need to understand what is the integral identity of the jiva, that which defines the jiva. Something that you take it out from the jiva, then he ceases to exist. That is dharma, not what one's faith is, because faith can be changed. So what is it that uniquely defines, not uniquely, but what is it that eternally defines the identity of Jiva? And it does not have any beginning or end. When we understand that, then we can say what is the dharma of the Jivatma, what is the dharma of the living entity. So that dharma is not sectarian, it's not faith-based. So what is it? Right? Let's try to understand a little bit more in detail. Before we go into that, let me see what else is mentioned. Yeah, so same thing Srila Prabhupada mentions over here, that if you talk about any other, like any religions, particularly Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, they all had a beginning at a certain point in time. But sanatana-dharma, they don't have any beginning or identity. So the essence of the living entity is what? Right? That sustains. It sustains even when the body is destroyed. Right? Because body is temporary, living entity is eternal. So my dharma is something that should really define me, irrespective of the body that I assume. So that's what we have to find it out. So the identity of the Jivatma or the Swarup is service. If we take anyone in this world, in any species of life, all of us are engaged in doing service. In whatever capacity we might be doing it, everyone is doing service. So the example that is given is that, let's take the example like, I might be serving my child, my son, my wife, right? At home, I have my immediate family and I provide service to my family members. At work, I serve my employer. I have duty and obligation towards my parents. And this would apply to, you can say, pretty much everyone, right? In a larger context, we can say that politicians or statesmen, they are also providing service to the public. And in election season, they might go and canvass, like now in the US, we are going through an election cycle. We can see that, candidates going into active canvassing, but they are seeking out voters and say, if you elect me, this is a service that I will provide to you, right? So that is their primary point for canvassing. And in case of businesses, we see that there are different business enterprises, and they are providing service to the customers, whether it could be selling physical goods or different kind of services. So in this way, different enterprises, they are also providing service to different people. Okay. So in this way, everyone is engaged in serving different living entities. So it all begins with immediate family, but then their identity also extends to servicing your community, one's own race or caste, or members of their own community, and then it extends to nations, and then even it extends to species of life, right? So this idea of humanism, where we will do everything for the humanity to survive, but often it is at the cost of other species of life, right? So no matter how much we expand, again, the idea is whether it is personal interest or expanded personal interest, it is still based on the principle of service. Does that make sense? Is that idea clear? Even in different species of life, even if we look at different birds or different animals, they also take care of their children, right? Or there are species of life which has a little bit evolved consciousness, especially if you look at lions or tigers, they are in groups, right? And then they try to protect their immediate family, like a pride of lions. So, there are a lot of she lions, and there's one male lion, and then he wants to make sure that his lineage continues, and then he wants to take care of the entire pride, right? So there is an expanded domain that he's trying to serve for. So there's a question: what service do children perform? So in case of children also, the right from childhood, as soon as there are 4-5 years of age, so in Vedic culture we see that they are actually trained in service. And even if the training is not there, the natural tendency to serve is present. So I can, all of you would have experienced also, and I can say from my experience, so I have a 5-year-old, will soon be 6, but even when he was 4 or something, when he sees that daddy is doing something in the kitchen or around the home, and he wants to come and help, he says, let me help you. And there might be some playful, sometimes it's more of a playful thing, but I've seen that there is tendency to really genuinely help in whatever way they can. They might not be able to do the task perfectly, but the tendency to help and serve is there. And we see that even Krishna in his childhood pastimes, he is showing. What is he showing? I think there is a particular pastimes where he was maybe 5 or slightly younger than that, and he brought the footwear of Nanda Maharaj on his head, and he's carrying and bringing it to his father, and he's saying, here's your footwear. So he's trying to do some service. So tendency to do service is naturally there even without training. We can see it in small children, but once they are turned 5, in traditional Vedic culture, they are systematically trained, especially the sons of Brahmanas and Kshatriyas. They go to Gurukul, and they live simple, austere life, and they are trained to serve the spiritual master or the teacher, Guru. So then that is the training to do service is systematically inculcated. Or even at home, in the family of Vaishyas and Sudras, the laborer caste, they right from their young age, they are engaged in their family activities or traditions, and they help. They learn the art of whatever their family tradition is. If it is agriculture, they help in the farms, or if they are different artists, or blacksmith, goldsmith. At young age, they try to not try, they're actually trained in all those skills. And in the current modern context, things have changed. Again, it's a big topic, I don't want to digress a lot, but it does not become obvious to us because we have this industrial scale mass education system that was done for a different purpose. The purpose of the modern education system was to provide the labor class for the industries, right? They are able to serve that, and that goes through an extended period of theoretical knowledge, going through K-12 education and then college, and it's not very obvious that what kind of service they are able to provide in their younger age. But even in that context, we see that parents at certain age, they encourage children to organize their own things, do their own laundry, learn some basic skills in terms of cooking and things like that. So regardless of however you look at in either in the modern context or a Vedic context, the tendency to serve is naturally present, and then it is systematically also inculcated. Does it answer your question, Kashyap?
Yes.
Okay.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes.
So when we talk about faith, you talked about the Muslim, Christian, and Buddhist, and I can understand that there is a particular point of time when that faith started. But for Hinduism, I'm a little bit eager to know more about it, because Hinduism, as I understand, it's a worship of demigods, and the worshipping of demigods was there, as even during the period of Rama and as well as Krishna. So how does it doesn't have, or how does it have a starting time and ending time?
Yeah, it's a good question. So many times when we talk about starting of different tradition, like in case of Islam, it's pretty straightforward. Christianity is pretty pretty straightforward. You can say the same thing about Buddhism. When it comes to Hinduism, if you look from a scholastic perspective or academic perspective, if you take a course in university and you talk about Hinduism, they will teach you that, hey, the Vedas were written by, they would talk, maybe they talk about Ved Vyas, but probably have different ideas also, like Manu Samhita was written by Manu, and they put a time and then say that, hey, this is when the philosophical idea came into being. And then this is when they would even put a date on Sanskrit, how Sanskrit evolved, and this is when the language was founded. And then the Vedas were compiled at this point in time. And then that idea sort of is propagated, and people have that particular understanding. And then though the Vedas are apauruseya, they did not come into being at any particular point in time, though they might have been written in a script form at a particular point in time, because especially in Kali Yuga, people don't have good memory. And that's the reason at the beginning of Kali Yuga, Ved Vyas, he wrote, presented Vedas in a written script format, so that people who don't have good memory, they are able to read it. But that doesn't mean that it did not exist prior to that. Now, even the scholars might not even agree to the date of when Ved Vyas wrote it. They probably have a different calculation. But before that, there was Shruti and Smriti. So the knowledge was transmitted, it existed through oral reception. And then also Smriti means through memory. But they do not accept that. So anyway, that is the academic understanding, and based on that academic understanding, the idea of Hinduism beginning at a certain point in time is established, and that is what is propagated. Now the practitioners of Hinduism, they might or might not accept that idea, and they have this understanding that even before that this tradition and culture existed, and so they might have that some idea of eternality, but then of the eternality of the practice of the religion itself. But that is mostly within the understanding of practitioners, and they might still identify themselves as a Hindu, but some of them have the understanding that it's not Hinduism, they have sanatana-dharma. So in that context, how do Hindus understand it, right? So that's what the question is. Do Hindus believe that, again, the religion came into being at a particular point in time? What I would say is that unless they have the proper understanding of sanatana-dharma, they are, even if they're not following the time scale of the academicians, they probably have their own understanding of a time scale, maybe much more older than that. But again, they might think that it came into being at a particular point in time, even if they trace it back to Brahma, that, hey, when the world was created, and Brahma got this knowledge from Vishnu within his heart, and that's the beginning of this Hinduism, if they are calling it Hinduism, or some of them might have that, again, understanding of sanatana-dharma. But again, at that point in time, they are putting, even if the time scale is much longer, they are putting a point in time that, hey, this came into being at a particular point in time. It's not many have this understanding that, well, it does not mean that Vedic knowledge did not exist prior to that, right? Because the creation of this universe and the birth of Brahma is, again, just a fraction of the entire duration of Brahma's life is just one fraction of a second compared to the eternity of the time scale, and the universes are getting created and destroyed every single moment from the perspective of Karanodakshai Vishnu, right? And then this knowledge of the Vedas, it's always eternally present, and it is manifested and it is unmanifested. So that understanding might not be there. Mostly it is not there, especially who identify themselves as Hindus. And those who do have the understanding, they don't identify themselves as Hindus, but they have the understanding of sanatana-dharma. So because if they really have that understanding, they won't limit themselves to that sectarian identity of Hinduism. Does that make sense?
Yes, Prabhu. Yeah, thank you, Prabhu.
Any other questions? Okay. So yeah, faith can be changed. One's faith can be changed, but that changing of faith does not really bring about any genuine transformation in the within the soul, right? So for instance, we see that there are missionaries. Suppose you go to India, there are a lot of missionaries who are active, and they want to deliver the pagans and turn Hindus into Muslims. Hindus into Christians. And then there are people who really feel that their Hindu dharma is in threat, and then what they would do is sometimes they have this mass gatherings, and they have reconversion ceremonies where the Christians are again converted back to Hindus. So it's just changing your title from Hindu to Christian, again back to Hindu or to Muslim. But unless one really goes through, even if by changing the label and reconverting them to Hindus, that in itself is not going to make any genuine transformation of one's spiritual identity, or regaining genuine transformation in terms of regaining one's own spiritual identity. That won't happen. So faith can be changed, and just by changing the faith, it really does not help much, right? But what is the real identity? The real identity is that we are all engaged in service of someone. And when we really understand what is our identity, we are spiritual fragments of the ultimate absolute truth, Krishna. And he is the original enjoyer. He is the original proprietor. Our enjoyment is also there, but our enjoyment is in association with Krishna. Our enjoyment is subordinate to his enjoyment. It's not that there is no enjoyment. But when we act on that platform, then our original identity is re-established. So in truest sense, the sanatana-dharma, or the eternal duty, is to serve Krishna, right? For his enjoyment. Just like a child is naturally, the child is serving the father, right? In a cute way. He's bringing his, like Krishna, he was bringing footwear for his own father, Nanda Maharaj. Or in our home, when the child is trying to serve, he might not be perfect, right? But he's not doing in a with a mood, in a morose mood. Oh, I have to serve my father. He's excited to serve. And by serving the father, the child is also getting an enjoyment. So this service is not something which is, it's not something that is done out of grudge, right? It's not that somebody is forced to do it. It's the natural tendency and the identity of the soul to serve the Lord. And in that state, one is eternally happy. So the example that is given over here is just like the different parts of the body. If they want to sustain and be healthy, they have to feed the stomach. If the hand says that I'm not going to feed the stomach, I'll try to consume the food on my own, then the body will become weak. And because the body becomes weak, even the hand won't be able to sustain itself. Or the other example that is given is, for a plant to survive, you have to water the roots. But if you just water the flowers or the leaves or the stems, that's not going to sustain the plant. Similarly, the root of all of us is Krishna. And so we are, by serving Krishna, which is actually our natural original tendency, one can revive our original relationship. And that is the sanatana-dharma. That is the original identity. Now, in this world, in our current situation, we don't have idea about that sanatana-dharma to serve the Lord, right? So there's another sanatana-dharma which exists in this world, and which is actually based on the principle of service. But that service is based on what our nature is. So the varnashram dharma is also known as sanatana-dharma. Now, varnashram dharma, we were discussing in detail in the later sections of Bhagavad Gita. But varnashram dharma is not the caste system. The caste system is a perverted and corrupt version, which looks like varnashram dharma, but it's not. The caste system, one's caste is decided based on birth and cannot be changed, right? And then there is other exploitative idea within the caste system. But the original varnashram system is where not by birth, but based on one's own nature, one is engaged in particular kind of activities. So the tendency to serve is always there. And so the four classes, they always exist in all kind of societies. Even those who are not following varnashram dharma, you go to anywhere in a communist society, when they're trying to create a classless society, but even in a communist society, there were intellectuals. So USSR had made tremendous, scientific progress in terms of building, different nuclear weapons or different other weaponry systems and naval systems, and they also had intellectual class, and they, and they had administrators. So even in order to manage a classless society, they had this 5-year planning and 10-year planning, and so the administrators were doing the planning. So they wanted to create a classless society, but it's a sentiment, but it's not practically realizable. In order to manage a so-called classless society, again, they needed administrators, and they had these labor camps where the labor people were sent, and they were forced to do labor, and there were farmers who were doing agriculture. And so it's, even in a communist society, you see these four classes are there. Even in a capitalist society, you see people who are entrepreneurs, there are people who are laborers, there are administrators, there are intellectuals. So what is the difference? The difference is that in the varnashram society, these classes are based on one's nature, not based on skills, not based on liking, not based on aptitude, but based on one's nature. And what exactly it means, again, we will discuss much more in detail in the later sections. But to give an example, is nature is something that one is forced to act upon, one is driven to do, right? So service, the tendency to serve is always there. That is what the sanatana-dharma is. But when it is scientifically divided, these classes where one is not engaged based on one's liking or monetary remuneration criteria, where, hey, if I'm going to get more money in this, then this is what I'm going to do, right? So if I stop getting money or higher remuneration, I will stop doing it. You see, then it cannot be sanatan. So the current capitalist society is where people are remunerated based on what their contribution is, right? So the primary motivation is what? Primary motivation is making money. If you stop paying, I'll stop acting, right? Also, it is also based on liking. Hey, do what you like, and hopefully that is also your means of employment. But in varnashram society, liking is not so much of a criteria. Like Arjuna said, I don't like to fight, but Krishna is saying, well, you're saying like that, but by nature you will be forced to fight, even if you don't like it, because it's a nature. Sometimes, some people, they are very fastidious in terms of they want to keep everything clean. And if somebody comes and make a mess, they expect them to, clean up that mess. But if that person is not cleaning up, they cannot stand that mess. And they would probably hate to clean it up, but they will still clean it up because they're forced to do it. That is their nature. So the Varnas has a strong association with how they are impelled by the modes of nature. We talked about Sattva, Raja, Tama. These modes are acting and they're defining our nature, and we are sort of forced to act according to our nature. So the division of labor is based on this nature. Again, so it's not based on our liking. It is not based on our aptitude. Like skills can be developed, but just because somebody is good in shooting arrows does not make him Kshatriya. And we see a lot of examples in Shastras where somebody really had a lot of military skills. Like Eklavya is an example. Again, I don't want to go too much in detail. We'll discuss at appropriate time. But Eklavya was not a Kshatriya, though he was an expert marksman, right? And so skills is not a criteria. Aptitude is not a criteria. Liking is not a criteria. Monetary remuneration is not a criteria. The criteria is really what drives us. And then these societies are not immune. They are immune to collapse, meaning that in a capitalist society, if the monetary remuneration stops, then people would stop. If my employer stops paying me, I won't go to job, right? But in a varnashram society, when people are impelled by their nature, even if there is a temporary setback in terms of one is not able to maintain one's family by doing the activity that really defines one nature, there are exceptions which by which someone can temporarily take up something else to maintain the family, but then they're not prone to give up their original dharma. As soon as possible, they would or they would part-time continue to do what they are doing. And there are many examples of that even we see in the present world. I think it's an important topic, so I'll spend some time talking a little bit about this. So I'll give you an example which I quote often. It was a couple of years ago, I believe, in the US. I don't remember what city or state, but there was this Best Buy store, and then a security guard who was working over there. It was a late evening. What he saw was that there were cops who were chasing a suspect, and the suspect ran into the parking lot of Best Buy. And the security guard immediately figured out what's going on, so he actually, started pursuing that suspect, and then he got hold of him and helped him get arrested. And the cops were really appreciative of him. But the next day in the news, we see that that the event was covered by media, like the security guard saved, helped get this suspect arrested. But the CEO publicly fired the security guard. And his idea was that, well, the suspect was not on Best Buy's property, neither the goods within the store where there was any threat of those being stolen, or none of the customers were, in danger that he had to, that was his defined duty was. And so his idea was that he risked his life to do something that was very risky and then was not needed, and then this is against our policy, they fired him. But when they asked him, the media had another interview with him, and he said, I was happy what I did because that was the right thing to do. And if this happens again, I'll do it again, right? So you see, he's not driven by his idea of what's going to help me generate remuneration, right? So he has that real Kshatriya spirit, right? So, so similarly, there are many examples that I give you of people who have the real Kshatriya spirit or real Vaishya spirit. You see a lot of people who have that business minded. Even if they fail multiple times, they might fail in business, they would again pick it up. That's their nature. They are driven by it, right? Just the act of being engaged in that profession is what drives them, even if they might not be, even if they might suffer a lot of losses. But generally they are good, and they are able to re-establish or start another business where they are successful. There is this business community in the 70s, a lot of in Uganda, there are a lot of Indians, business-minded people who were running successful businesses, but the dictator over there, Idi Amin, he was not happy with that. They thought that these Indians are just milking all the locals, and they are making so much profit. So he gave them like a really short notice. He said, leave the country or else, you'd have some dire consequences. They left overnight all their homes and businesses. And I think UK accepted them as immigrants. And, within a few years, they had successful businesses in London. And then what Idi Amin thought that this would revive the businesses for the locals, it didn't happen. The locals did not have that sense of, they did not have the Vaishya mentality. And then 15, 20 years passed on, and then actually their economy got worse. It declined. The locals were not able, they were not entrepreneurs. Now recently the news I was reading is that, well, Idi Amin is gone long back ago, but even the current government, they are actually reaching out to the descendants of people who migrated from Uganda to UK and say, hey, you know what, it was a big mistake. We really need you guys back, and they're asking their descendants to come back and restart, establish businesses in Uganda. So you see, so the point I'm trying to make is that there is this concept of varna, and the idea of providing service to the society is there. It's there in capitalist society, communist society, but it's not scientifically organized. The sanatana-dharma, the way it is scientifically organized, one is driven by the nature, and because they are driven by the nature, that system actually went on for millions of years ago, right? And now it is not manifest at the present. That does not mean it won't be revived fully in the future. But so Varnashram Dharma is also known as Sanatana-dharma in the material world. The original Sanatana-dharma is service to Krishna in the spiritual world, acting on that platform. But for that we need purification, right? And unless we are purified, we have to act according to our material nature, which is governed by these three modes of nature, Sattva, Rajo, and Tama. And as long as we are governed by it, we act according to that platform for our gradual purification. And again, we'll discuss that in detail, how it purifies and how that our dharma according to our varna can be engaged in the service of Krishna, and how actually is very important to act on that platform in the service of Krishna. That will be discussed later in Bhagavad Gita. But I just wanted to provide the other context of what it really means by Sanatana Dharma. I mean, there is a spiritual understanding of the word Sanatana Dharma is service to Krishna, but then in our present context, it refers to the Varnashram Dharma. Anyone has any questions so far?
What are the one can identify his own? Is there any?
Sorry?
What are the means? One can identify his own varna. I mean, is there any way that he can?
Yes. So this is also discussed in the later chapters in Bhagavad Gita, so we'll discuss at that point in time.
Okay.
It's just that because this came up, I just wanted to mention that briefly, but yeah, we'll have opportunity to discuss that in detail.
Okay.
Anyone, any questions? Okay. I think we still have 7-8 minutes. I think we can cover one more topic, and then looks like we'll have another session to bring this to conclusion. Okay, so the next topic Srila Prabhupada mentions over here is that in Bhagavad Gita, the worship of different demigods is not approved. There is this verse from Bhagavad Gita in the 7th chapter. Kames taistir hitagyana prapadyante anya devta tam niyamam asthaya prakritya niyata swaya. Which means those whose intelligence has been stolen by material desires surrender unto demigods and follow the particular rules and regulations of worship according to their own natures. So we briefly discussed this earlier, where in this material world there are 330 million demigods and demigoddesses, and these are different posts or positions which are which help facilitate the maintenance of this universe. So they associate Vishnu in the maintenance of the universe. They're in charge of different powers or energies or different aspects of the management of this universe. And these positions can be attained by anyone, any living entity, including, so we are living entities, Jivatmas. Any of these positions can be attained through the dint of our pious activities. And those posts can be retained for a extremely long period of time compared to our material calculation. Or human life is only 100 years, but compared to our lifespans, those lifespans are much longer. But again, those are temporary. And once the credit of pious activity is over, one again comes back to this mortal world. That means Bhuloka, where we are there. The demigods are in the Swarga Loka. So there are different planetary systems. And because the demigods are in charge of different administrative aspects, there are means by which they can be worshipped and approached. It's more in a business sense kind of thing. Well, you want to please some demigod and to get some favor, just like, in especially, if you see in an Indian context where the government systems are very complex, and where somebody wants to expedite things, they go and approach an officer and want to do some favor to the officers to expedite one's own task that is assigned to that officer, or things like that. And so it's very business. There's no genuine love, right? It's we want something from the demigods, and the worship is done in order to get some sort of benefit in this material world. But then there's also different kind of worships which are suggested in some Vedic literatures, where Karma Kanda section especially, where one can, after quitting this body, one can attain the destination where these demigods are residing, and they can themselves also become one of the demigods. So that's another purpose of doing demigod worship. One is to gain some benefits within our current life, and then benefits after this life, but all those are temporary. The service to Krishna is not like that. Actually, Krishna says that even whatever the demigods are giving to you or providing you, they are not able to do it on their own. Ultimately, they are doing it from my power or my energy. I am the original provider. They are just the intermediaries. Just like in a government office, the government officer might be doing some favor to us, right? Or might be, but they are not doing on their own accord, right? The authority by which they are able to do is provided by the constitution and the legislative assembly, and it's the entire mechanism, and the president and the prime minister, they reside on top of them, and it's through their backing that they are able to provide their influence or authority. But the common masses sometimes, especially in remote places where they don't have, for them, the local magistrate or the representative is the ultimate authority. So they might feel like that, but they are not able to do it on their own. So similarly, Krishna is saying whatever the demigods are providing, they are not providing on their own accord, right? Ultimately they are getting their power and authority based on the ultimate authority of Krishna. So the service to Krishna that is recommended is not of that kind, in the sense that it's not a business dealing. We don't approach Krishna in order to get some temporary material benefit, but because that is our natural original identity, to be happy in service of Krishna. So it's a completely different category. So the living entities, like the Lord, they are full of consciousness, and they are also after happiness, but the Lord is perpetually happy, and if living entities cooperate with him, and then by his association, they can also be happy. So one quick example Srila Prabhupada mentions over here is that even Krishna, during his manifest presence, what did he do? He showed the example where Nanda Maharaj, being a Vaishya, is dependent on rain for the crops to grow. And so every year he used to perform the worship of Indra, so that sufficient quantity of rain be provided. When Krishna says, why are you worshipping Indra? Stop this worship. And instead worship Govardhan, who is there's a lot of it provides nice grass for our cows, and the cows provide milk. Now Govardhan is not different from Krishna, and there is an entire pastime of how Indra is offended, and then he tries to teach a lesson, but he does not realize this Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. He appears like a small boy, and then he finally understands and he apologizes to Krishna. And so from this pastime, again, we understand that, ultimately, if we go to the source, the Lord will again provide everything that is needed for our spiritual progress and our happiness. Ultimately, that's not the goal. Our goal is not material happiness, but our regaining our spiritual identity. But as long as we are in this world, the Lord will provide for our maintenance. And so we should not be motivated by getting temporary material benefits from demigods. Now, many demigods are also servants of Vishnu and Krishna, so they are respectable. We respect them, nothing against them. But the point here being is that we should use this valuable human life in trying to regain our spiritual identity, and not be motivated by gaining temporary benefits through the worship of demigods, which would perish in due course of time, or if not, definitely when the body perishes. So with that, I think we'll take, it's already 6:31, we'll stop over here. If there are any last minute questions or comments, I can take that. And then I'm just looking at what's left. I think we should be able to cover this in the next session. A lot of these concepts we had covered, so should be able to go through this quickly. Okay, any questions? Anyone? Comments? If not, we will stop the class over here. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. See you all next week.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.